I know Cavino is solidly prepped every day. We would all need to be solidly prepped every day.
Cause it's all about the paper. Now buckle up your seats and prepare for the journey. Let the music ease your soul, grab a spliff and start burning. Relax with us and take a trip to the heavens and come and spend a day in the 757.
Hydro, the vapes and blunts I smoke.
Some people know him as Christian. The family knows him as Krish.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey.
You may know him as Spotty.
Hey, what's up?
You have been part of the Covino and Rich show since, I believe, 2007, if I'm not wrong.
February 12th, 2007.
February 12th. Okay, good to know. 10 days before my birthday, so I'll always remember that. February 12th, 2007. I graduated high school in 2006, so one year.
Thanks for that.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm getting up there. I am the biggest Michael Jackson fan I know, right?
I mean, what's not to love?
Right.
Yeah, I mean his music, I assume.
Okay,
not the lifestyle, but the music.
The reason I ask or I bring that up is because if I'm not mistaken, you did work with Janet at one point.
Interesting. Like work with her? I did.
You were in studio.
Yes, so I did. Yeah, so when I worked at Z100 back in the day in New York, which was where I met Rich.
Mm-hmm.
One of my responsibilities as I progressed in production was to produce something called reality radio. And what that was is they would invite in a celebrity. The celebrity we'd give them a list of songs, which also created some drama. And I can explain that to you if you're really that curious.
Oh, I am.
Okay. A list of songs, and they would just like pick off a list of songs, which was a mixture usually of current popular songs, their songs, and maybe like some slightly older songs, which are known as recurrents in radio. And they would pick off a list, they would intro them, they would talk about them, they would talk about their music, and I would edit it together it was like an hour packaged show that would air usually, I feel like it aired at like 7 o'clock and then would air throughout the day on radio. So Janet Jackson, yes, was one of the people that I was lucky enough to encounter. Actually, I mean, several huge celebrities or musicians I got to do that which was really cool. That was one of the cooler parts of when I worked at Z100 when I got that responsibility. So that was really fun. So
you mentioned, so I was excited just because to be in the presence of a Jackson to me
would incredible.
I can't even imagine the feeling, and for them, they're walking in, there's the production guy, but for you, I can't imagine the feeling of just the entire legacy of the family. It's just crazy to me to think of being in the same room with somebody. I mean, when I met you guys for the first time, I was like, these are the guys I've been listening to for years. And to have a Jackson in the same room as me, I can't even imagine.
You know what's surprising about Janet? I don't think I really thought of that during the time I was doing it. I was actually, when I did production and I was, much younger, and you'd have seen the progression of me as a person, but especially when I was back then in the 2000s, I was just like a chubby fat kid, and working in radio was really exciting, but I was also very shy and timid and just kind of like knew my role. Mm-hmm. So I kind of stayed in the background. I did what I had to do, stepped up when I needed to, did my job really well. Never really tried to be the, oh my God, I'm in awe of a celebrity kind of guy. I tried to separate that and do what I had to do. And occasionally, you get a photo if there's someone you're really, but like I never tried to step on those toes. But Janet Jackson, surprisingly, of many of the people that have come through Z100, very down to earth. I feel like she was there by herself, maybe with one rep. The afternoon guy, Cubby, who was like the music director, was the big guy. I feel like he was in there, so he kind of oversaw it. But for the most part, very chill and down to earth. Like the people that created these huge, big stirs, and like they had hundreds of people there just to oversee them walking in and out. Those were like the crazy diva things. Janet Jackson, not so much.
That
actually,
is
really
crazy.
Cool. Yeah.
And you mentioned Cubby, and so This is funny because
love that guy.
I'm in Arizona. I didn't get Z100, especially in the late 90s when I was a kid, and I was a huge fan of pop music.
Right.
But Cubby, Jojo Wright, these people, the top 9 at 9, these are things that I had to seek out as a kid in AZ, right? And not even Phoenix and Yuma. So we had nothing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And no YouTube, no nothing. And when you guys mentioned those people, the Cubbies, and I'm like, I remember them from bits and pieces of maybe Radio Row, of and that stuff to me blows my mind, because I'm like, that is so cool that you guys lived it, and like you said, you were never in awe of anything. You just
Right.
did your job, but I think that's what made you good at it.
Yeah, like I always recognized my role as a behind the scenes person, and never, it was always more of like a respect kind of thing. And like I never wanted to be like, even with the show, like the guys will even say, like, with all the people that we've had come through the studios, especially at Sirius XM, a handful of times I would be like, oh, I want a photo with them. Oh, I want a photo. Even as producer, like I'm the guy that they're kind of going through. Even as producer, I'm like, no, I don't want to be that guy. Let's focus, make sure the hosts get what they need to get. This is whatever. It's very rare that I'm that person that's like, I need a photo. I need a photo. Like I don't have a giant collection of photos. Eventually I was like, yeah, I'll just get a photo, because it was, we're always having people that I like, but I never wanted to be that person in radio or in TV. Like I remember when I interned at MTV, they were like, "Oh, you don't look at it. If you're in the hallway, don't look at, Carson Daly. Don't look at it. Like don't interact with anybody." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll just, keep behind the scenes. I'll stay." And I always appreciated that role, and always, that was my thing.
And it's really cool to me, as just growing up a super huge fan of, like you said, Carson Daly,
Yeah.
TRL. That was my so.
Right.
To me, even when Covino mentions McFadden, right?
Yeah.
So after Carson left, Damian Fahey came in, Brian McFadden came in. They had that kind of core group of people they were trying to get to replace Carson.
Right.
I think is super cool, because Brian McFadden follows the after show and he watches our stories.
Cool.
And for me, he'll like a story, he'll whatever. And I understand he probably started because of he knew we were part of, as far as fans of Covino and Rich and all that good stuff. But as me, just a little fat Mexican from Arizona, to have Brian McFadden, and now, I'm sure he goes into Walmart and nobody gives a but
Right.
I still am like, that's Brian McFadden. Like, and
At the time, I remember seeing him. He was there when I was there. So I interned in the summer of 2001. Carson Daly was still doing TRL, because I remember I worked on TRL one day. Because
I never knew that. I'm so stoked about that.
One day, because we were all, so as an intern, you're assigned to different departments and you kind of bounce around whenever they would do. That was at the time where they were doing a lot of specialty shows. A lot of
one, you said, right?
2001. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of specialty shows. So like you were working in production. I was walking back and forth to like pick up tapes in the heat in New York, whatever. But you were assigned to like one person or one show or one group or whatever. So I was assigned to like a few different people. And then there was a specific group that was always on TRL. So we never got to rotate through TRL, but I made friends with the people that worked on TRL. We were all our intern group. You know me, I'm fun. And I remember one day I showed up, couldn't find any of my people, and I'm just like sitting there for an hour, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go check in with the TRL people. So I went down and I worked on TRL for that day, and I remember getting in trouble because, I mean, this was 2001. No one had cell phones. If you had a cell phone, you barely turned it on. I couldn't find anybody. And then I remember at the end of the day, they were like, where were you? I'm like, I couldn't find you. I looked for people. So I just went and worked on TRL. But it was a really cool experience because I did watch it. Like a lot of the reason I got into working at Z100, I got into working at MTV. I'm like, these are cool things that I've experienced growing up or watching or at the time. And I'm like, I want to work for that, or I want to do that. That seems like fun. I always wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy what I was doing, and look at me now.
Yeah, it always did seem fun, though. It always seemed like, and whether that was something that they just portrayed as, whether it was a facade or whatever it was, that was something that as a kid, I mean, I was there. Okay, probably a female, but I was the target audience as far as age, right?
Right.
And that was just, they made it seem like the coolest place. You could call and you would pop up in the little window. I want to hear Blue Sunday by Orgy or whatever, and that was the coolest to me. So being that you even got to work on it for a day, got in trouble for it, I think it's worth it, right?
It had that vibe. It had that fun vibe. And I imagine there was a lot of, I was just touching on it for one day and like kind of an intern, so I wasn't knee deep in it. But like it had that fun because it was down on I want to say, what floor was that? Was it the 5th floor? It was down on the 5th floor. And it was the window studio. It had its own thing. All the offices were upstairs at 1515. Everything was downstairs. So it's like it's its own little vibe, own little world. Had its own little offices. The studio was cool. The news studio was off the main studio. So it had like such that fun, what you expect out of something, what you imagine shows are like. And we've heard obviously horror stories of talk shows and how the hosts are or whatever, but I feel like the team at MTV was younger, much more fun. They knew the product they were putting out, and it was just, it was a really cool experience. There was one day where I had to like pick something up in the TRL studio, so I was like standing off to the side near the photo booth. Remember the photo booth?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I was standing near the photo booth, and I remember it was the day that Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau were on. I think they were promoting Made. That may have come out around that time. You'd have to check on the date. But I remember I was just standing there off to the side, trying not to like, they were coming out of the studio, walking down the hallway. I was trying not to like, remember, don't look at the celebrities. And Vince Vaughn came over to me and like shook me. He's like, thank you. And then just kept walking. And I'm like, what the just happened? Why did he touch? What is going on? So stuff like just random moments like that, which were really unique. And I feel like to that show.
Yeah, okay. So you did mention upstairs. So they had, the studio, they had their news, they had, offices upstairs. When it came to, I was a huge MTV kid. So MTV News, right? So there was, we had Stooge and Pac. We had, I'm remembering, Kurt Loder.
I remember seeing Kurt Loder at the commissary, which I think was on I want to say the 8th. Oh, was that there was a deck above the windows?
Yeah.
Which was where the commissary was. And you could, because you could stand outside and look down on Broadway. But I remember seeing you would see them around. It was bizarre. Like, these are people that you knew and would see all the time. You're like, there they are, just eating a bowl of soup.
I always grew up like a huge fan of just like really behind the scenes type of is what like I thrive on. So any behind the scenes type of like, the on air is cool, but the way it comes together, the way we get to see the final product is what really like I live for, and that's why I have so much fun doing this type of thing, because there's so much production that goes into it, whether it's live at the moment or it's beforehand, creating things, doing this or that. And that's something that I think was kind of cool for me, especially when you guys came to Patreon, is something that I liked because we got to kind of see that.
I hate and love, but I hate that I just have a grasp and understanding of this. I don't know how. There's something in my brain that understands technology. I'm not saying I'm the smartest, even though I'm the Klug. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm the greatest, but I've always understood it. I've always understood. And if I don't understand it, I tinker until I figure things out. I've always been that way. It's that intellectual curiosity that I always speak about. Mm-hmm. But there's just something about like figuring out how technology works and messing around with things and trying new things and seeing whatever and seeing what develops, which is great. Sometimes it's forced upon me. Like when you said, when we moved to Patreon, I had 3 days to figure out how to create a live streaming audio and video show.
I still don't know how you did it.
Out of, whatever I had in my apartment during COVID. So it was like it was incredible. But it's just, and since then, if you go back, and which is sometimes funny to look at, if you go back and look at the first show and you look at what we have now, it's a well-oiled machine. But back then it was like I had this crazy frame that looked like rust, and
I remember it.
I was using my camera, like weird camera angles, and it was bizarre, but getting it done and then like always trying new things and trying to improve and figure out ways to like do things better. There's still always room for improvement.
There is always room for improvement, and it's funny when you do look back at the first couple of shows on Patreon that I mean, I know you're hard on yourself because it was you the one doing it, but we all kind of went through that journey with you guys as far as like we knew, hey, Monday they're not going to be on serious anymore, Yeah. And to see what you threw together in that time was like, oh man, like I don't know how, and I don't know how many people understood at the time. I had never played around with things or trying to live stream or whatever, so I didn't even understand. But after I started to kind of learn that kind of stuff, tinkering, like you said, or whatever, I was like, man, he did this. He figured it out in a couple of days. Chat GPT, Copilot, none of that was even around back then, right? So
Nope.
You had to rely on you actually digging and doing some research on it, and it was amazing. So I mean, don't sell yourself short on it.
Yeah, figuring out we were a complete audio medium. That's it. We were just on Sirius. We had equipment. We were connecting to a studio. All that infrastructure was in place. It was basically just like creating. Obviously there is stuff in place at all these other live streaming things, but we've never done that before. So It's like recreating our own infrastructure that works. And even now, it's still needs a little tinkering and work, but it's there.
When you guys came to Fox Sports, I don't know if there was something in there that didn't allow you guys to put out maybe free content, or if you guys have like a non-compete or something like that, because right off the bat, when you guys, went to Patreon and Fox Sports and all that good stuff, I was like, damn, I feel like they need more free content out there.
Covino says it all the time, and I really do believe the product of Overpromised is incredible. And I think it's a really tight 20-something minutes that I wish just more people saw.
Yeah.
Because it's a really good product. And it's almost like the highlights of our show.
And that's one thing that Covino says a lot is it's the best thing we do, right? That's one thing
that's great. I think it's a great, it's a compact product. It's a compact version of what we do on a daily basis. I think the Patreon show is great, allows us to elaborate, dive deeper into topics, be a little bit more free, discuss things, talk about our lives, all that stuff. Overpromise is like, let's have these two fun topics that might be a little sports related, but very usually pop culture related. Hammer them out, have some visuals to it, have a little fun with it, move on. And I think if you want a sample of what the show is, that's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the hardest thing as a content creator. You guys are trying, it's basically how do we get more eyes on it?
Yeah.
You have Overpromise, which is a great product. How do we get more eyes? Like, what the can somebody just tell us?
There's no formula. And we're trying to play with our social media a little bit. And I've outsourced that because I don't have the time. And, it gets eyes, but it's in my opinion, it's never going to convert. Maybe you get one person a month that's like, oh, there's a funny clip. Let me sign up. I don't think that people, if anything, you're giving them free content. They're like, cool, saw your show. I'm moving on. There's just so much out there. It's very rare that there are people, which is why I love our core audience. It's very rare that there are people that can sit for 2.5 hours, 2 hours, and enjoy a show.
Yeah, and which I do. I love.
Right, and I think that's great. And what's funny is I'm not one of those consumers. For me, just like I don't read books anymore, because when I used to be in New York and be commuting, I would sit on a train. I would be on a train for 2 hours a day, and I would be able to just sit there and read a book, or listen to music, or listen to a podcast. It's like now I'm in my car for spurts at a time, like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes, and I don't have the ability. Like my wife can sit and watch a movie, a 2.5 hour movie, in 20 to 30 minute increments. Like she'll watch it and then she'll have to go do something. So she'll pause it, come back to it the next day and continue. I'm like, I can't watch something like that.
Yeah, you can't do it like that. I
can't listen to something like that. I have to do it from start to finish. So for a 2 hour show, I can't commit to it because I would need to listen to it from start to finish.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's one thing that I try to listen to
Yeah.
it from start to finish every day.
Right.
And obviously I'm at work, so I'm
Yeah.
that little thing called work gets in the way of my show. So, I'm
Beat it
trying to
work.
be in on the chat or whatever and all that good stuff. But then I have to come back later in the evening, and I think that's when I can really listen from start to finish.
It's not that I want to do less work, but I think if we had a slightly shorter product, I think it would have much more impact. And I feel like people hear that and they're like, oh, they just want to work less. It's like, no. I feel like I want to give you a much more condensed, packaged product in a shorter amount of time that you can consume, rather than being like, oh, here's a whole 2 hours that I need to process, rather than, oh, I can give an hour of my day. That's cool. 2 hours of my day, an hour of my day, cool. If anything,
Yeah.
an hour a day, 5 days a week, or like, whatever. So these are thoughts that I have, and I'm sure if Covino and Rich would completely disagree, but it's not about wanting to do less work. It's about creating a better product.
Well, and I
want
feel
everyone
like
to understand that.
if you do have, if you know that you're going in, you have an hour
Yeah.
as opposed to 2.5 hours, you're going to come with the harder hitting, right? You're going to come with this story. If you have 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you're going to tell it. If you have an hour, you're gonna go through your checklist of brainstorming and start vetoing, right?
Right.
Because the real estate that you have for the product, you have an hour. So it has to be my hard hitting. So I don't see a problem, but
Yeah, we'd all have to be a little bit more on our game to make that happen. We'd have to like be a little.
Well, I know as far as
I know Covino is solidly prepped every day. We would all need to be solidly prepped every day.
yeah, we have
Elements.
I know we talked about Patreon, Z100, all that good stuff. But I think the hardest hitting question yet.
Bring it.
I have it written down on my notes.
Yeah.
So I hope you're ready.
By the way, I could talk for hours.
Okay, same. So
just feel free to ask me whatever you like.
My question right here:
Answer anything.
have you got your cocktail smoker kit?
Did you send me one?
No, I'm saying have you got one?
No, but I'd love to get one.
Well, so that's the thing is that I was looking around on Amazon. Right?
Yeah,
and
send me a link.
I thought about sending you one, and I was looking around. And I go, should I send? And I was like, is it something he's still into? Because I know you mentioned it at this point, probably a year and a half ago, in passing. And I was like, I wonder if he ever got his. And now I'm like, damn, if I would have sent it for your birthday in July, I would have been like, I feel like it would have been more of a surprise now than if you do get it. So either way, if you get something, I mean, whatever.
Don't send it to me. I don't drink. I don't drink a lot at home. Like I used to drink a lot more at home. I don't really. I try not to. I try and reserve it for occasions when I'm like out having a drink or like someone comes over, have a drink. I don't just sit and be like, I need to have a drink right now. If anything, I just consume coffee all day. That's my vice. But it would be something cool to have. I do enjoy the occasional smoked old fashioned. I think is really great. Not all the time. I think smoke has has its place. Not all the time. Smoke's a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that could be something cool to have. Bring a girl over, just like wow her with my little smoked old fashioned.
I thought it was cool. That's why I was like, I wonder if you ever got it. I never heard you mention it after you had said it a couple of times. So I was like, damn, I wonder if you ever got his.
I looked into it and I just remember seeing like all these different types, and I'm like, I need to do a little bit more research because it seems like this is very involved. And I want to make sure I get the right one. And that's how I buy things. I always look. It takes me days to purchase something because I have to look at all these different variations, do research, look at Reddit, make sure I get the right one before I buy something.
So earlier we were talking about, Nicolas Cage, the handful of people that you wanted a picture with, right?
God.
So James Van Der Beek, Chris Martin, I just want to know who was two things. One, who was the coolest for you personally to meet? And two, who was the coolest person that was actually kind of chill? I know earlier you mentioned Janet, which to me, that's going to be your forever answer. But as far out of, Nick Cage, James Van Der Beek, all these, who do you think you were most stoked to meet? And then who was kind of the coolest that you were like?
So the thing that bothered me, let me backtrack. The thing that bothered me about James Van Der Beek and the whole, like, not really. I hate when they put me in these weird situations. Like, I'm a grown man, okay? And if I'm a fan of someone, much like I said earlier, like I don't want to be a fanboy. I want to maintain professionalism. It's like, I appreciate the product and the entertainment that these people bring to me. But it's much different. I don't know. It's much different than like who they are as a person and like whatever. So like Chris Martin and Coldplay, right? Huge Coldplay fan. Love their music. Love their concerts. Love their shows, whatever. Have all their albums. But like you meet Chris Martin, you're like, hey, I love your music. Then what?
Exactly. You're
You know, like, how's your kids? Sorry about your divorce. It's like, what do you talk about? It's like, we have nothing in common.
When you get lonely, do you buy the what is it? The candle that Gwyneth Paltrow?
Right. The vagina candle. Like, what do you talk about? When they like force you into these situations, like James Van Der Beek. Hey, cool. I'm sure I would enjoy having a beer with James Van Der Beek or a smoked old fashioned with James Van Der Beek at a bar, and we can sit and talk about life. Cool. But when you're meeting them in a studio and they're doing this interview and all this stuff's going on and they're being bounced around, it's like, hey, big fan of Dawson's Creek, because I'm sure he's never heard of that.
Yeah.
So it's like, what am I supposed to say? So when they're like, oh yeah, he's your biggest fan, I'm like, I love the show, I did, but like, I understand that there's more to you than being Dawson Leary. So
and it's a little weak too. I mean,
it is.
As a grown man, I feel like
yes,
you might feel like if I was somewhere and I was somebody and they were like, this dude loves you, I'd be like, little part of me would be like, that's a little bit weak.
It's weak.
Right?
Like there are very few people, and if anything, like the I would say the biggest person that I met that reflects on my life would probably be Betty White. When I had when I got to meet her, but that was honestly, she was doing an event. I walked in, the guy that does talent. I'm like, can I get a photo with her? I realize, I'm a huge fan, love the Golden Girls, whatever. He's like, absolutely. Walked up to her, like, oh my God, I'm such a huge fan. Like she appreciates that. And that's it. And that was the extent of our interaction. We took a little photo. She was standing there all sweet. I have the photo. That was a great memory that I can share. It's I have the magnet on my fridge. And it's great.
Unless you're gonna be, is it? I forget if it's Zito or who it is that became friends with John Mayer,
right? Which is cool. And
unless that's gonna happen.
Like when Rich always tells the story about how I was so like shy around Chris Martin, it's like he was there to do a performance in the Fishbowl, which you've seen. He was there to do a performance at the SiriusXM Fishbowl. There was a piano set up. He walked into the little studio. There were about 10 people in that studio. Was I supposed to push everyone aside and be like, "Oh my God, Chris Martin, I love you. Give me a hug." And
I'm a bigger fan than any of these people.
I'm a bigger fan than anyone. Let's talk about like parachutes and how the album was great. Oh my God, and this album, and tell me about this song and why you wrote this. It's like he doesn't want to do an interview before he goes out there. It's like,
and at the same time, are you going to ask him or say anything he hasn't heard 3 million times?
That's why it's like they're used to being in the position of, it's that assumed comfort where someone's coming in to do an interview. So they're having these conversations that are already predetermined, and there's a built-in level of comfort. Like, that's what an interview is. So they go in, they're like, okay, I have to talk to these people. It's like, I'm going in for this date. We know we're going to exchange information. They're going to ask me questions. We're going to talk back and forth. Cool. Host, guest. There's that thing. Who's this guy? What's his deal? Why is he coming in? Who's he talking to? I don't know you. What's your name?
But okay, so I have a question as far as I'm a huge music fan, which I know you are very well-rounded when it comes to music.
Yeah.
Rich is Mr. Pop guy, Covino is Mr. Rock guy, and you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I have an appreciation for different types of music. I'm not like very knowledgeable on certain genres, but yeah.
A lot of my development as far as a person and taste in music, I love all kinds of music. Contrary to popular belief, I don't only like O-Town. I like you love White Stripes and
you're the boy band.
Whatever.
You're the boy band guy.
But
just own it.
I am, and whatever. But I have a question for you. So when Spot was 12 to 15, right?
Yeah.
Let's say 92 to 95. You're born in 80, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So for your, let me see, what birthday do I have? The number one song on Spot's 12th birthday was Michael Jackson, Black or White.
You love Michael Jackson.
But I'm just going to give
Great
you
album. Yeah.
the top five songs of that week.
Okay.
Michael Jackson, Black or
Great
White,
song.
Color Me Bad, All for
Oh,
Love,
great song.
Mariah Carey, Can't Let You Go,
Oh.
Boys to Men, It's So Hard to Say Goodbye, and Hammer, Too Legit to Quit.
Oof.
So out of these, 12-year-old Spotty,
Yeah.
right? You still have a booger hanging out of your nose from the morning. Out of those top five songs,
Yeah.
which one do you think was the most influential on you?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So again,
Definitely
we have-
not. So I hate the song "Too Legit to Quit."
Cool.
I hate
Fix that.
it's you know why, and I'll tell you why. Because as you know, I do a '90s music show. It's the
Yeah.
song is it's great because it's 6 minutes long or 7 minutes long, and it recycles itself. So you can, if I need to edit it down to like half length, you still get the whole song. It just
Yeah.
recycles itself over and over again. Black or White, great song. Huge fan of '90s Michael Jackson.
Same.
Color Me Bad. I feel like Color Me Bad was a good vibe. So you have Color Me Bad and you have Boys to Men.
Correct.
Two great, I feel like I remember more Boys to Men though in the early 90s because I have older siblings. I feel like my brother James, J-Rock, was very into those music. My brother Ed loved a cappella and ballads and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna stick with Boys to Men. It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday. That'll be my most influential one. And I remember
On your
that's
12th birthday.
on my 12th birthday, and I remember that because it was the first. I believe this. I could be wrong, but I remember this hearing that it was like the first a cappella song. I don't know if it went number one, but maybe to be like chart high on the Billboard charts. It's the first a cappella song to chart that high.
I look at Boys to Men and I think of songs that I know in Spanish that are like American pop songs. They have one, I'll Make Love to You.
Yeah.
And it's Yo te voy a amar. It's like Yo te voy a amar cuando digas tú. And it's like,
Some crazy shit for you, man.
hey, we have what was the other one? So there's In Sync Gone.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, they have that one in Spanish as well. It's like tantas cosas que dijiste, amor. You're right.
You don't have to serenade me in Spanish. I do remember like all the cassettes always had like the Spanish version on the B side.
And it was cool because they would sing them. So
Yeah.
you would have, Boyz II Men singing, like Me rindo ante ti, like down on bended knee, like and that's that's one thing I miss about singles where you would get the instrumental, you'd get the alternate version, you'd get the radio version, you'd get the remix, Spanish version maybe,
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
But
it was a different time.
so Boyz II Men. All right. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, Boys to Men.
I don't know why for me, I was thinking it would probably be Color Me Bad, All for Love.
I love that song though. It's such it's a fun song, but like at the time, it was weird because at the time, it was just ahead of the grunge era. Like it was the start of the grunge era, but just ahead of the grunge era. So I do remember but I would listen to what my siblings listened to.
Yeah.
And whatever was like popular on the radio. So it's like, my sister was 8 years older than me. So she had already left. She was in college. But my brothers were in high school, and I feel like this, much like Cavino, that's why a lot of the times when Cavino talks about things, my brother James was 4 years older. My brother James was Cavino's age. So a lot of the music he would bring in is very similar to what Cavino was into. So like the Color Me Bads and the Boys to Men's and all that kind of stuff. So, but I also was always leaned more into pop music.
And
Pop music.
for me, I remember I have an older brother. He's 6 years older than me. And that's kind of some of his music influenced me as well. So I know things a little before my time.
Right.
One of the bands that was popular, and my brother wasn't a fan of them, but what he used to do, he was a little player, right? It was basically J-Rock and Spot was me and my brother. If we could, just so you know our dynamics. My brother would I remember there was an All For One CD that my brother would listen to the lyrics and he would write them down as poems to chicks.
I mean, it's not a bad move.
Hey, but okay, so fast forward to about 2 years ago, I go to an All For One and 98 Degrees concert, and one of the dudes from All For One, I'm sitting in the front row, obviously.
Of course.
He points me out and he goes, "This dude knows all the words." And I was like, and my sister's 2 rows behind me. I look back and she's just laughing because she's like, oh, obviously this is going to get pointed out, right? Because I mean, obviously, because I'm gigantic, right? So any O-Town concert, I tower over these little 5 foot,
But you love your boy bands, all for one.
I do. You know what though? And it's funny. I had this conversation with Covino on episode 200, where growing up, I was a fan of boy bands, and I thought they were cool because chicks liked them, right? So I was like, oh, they're cool.
Right.
I loved music because Michael Jackson, all that. So when I saw these dudes, I'm like, they can sing, they can dance, which I was a fan of, and chicks love them. And then you go to school and you're like, yeah, this Backstreet Boys band is dope, huh? And then dudes are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, I'm around. With corn, freak on a leash. Right? Like,
I was never into hard stuff. I lean more pop. I loved I loved the boy bands. I loved the popular music. I loved the angsty rock of the mid 90s. 80s music was huge in my house, obviously, because my sisters and brother were all older. So,
who were some of the 80s bands that or artists
that I like
that were popular in your house?
I mean, well, my sister. I don't know if you know, my sister's the biggest Rick Springfield fan.
I know now.
The biggest Rick Springfield fan. Even to this day, he's like in his 70s, and she'll still go see him. Loves him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like my brother Ed loved Monster Ballads.
Okay.
Loved
Do you remember
Ballads.
Monster Ballads, like
Yes.
where they would have like commercials for a CD?
Yeah.
When I see
Yes.
you smile,
It still does. But yeah, just like popular 80s music. So like, I know a lot of just random. It's all up here.
which is cool. Which I think is cool because it makes you well rounded. But I don't know if I have too much. Let me see. Oh, actually, I have two things.
I'll come back if you think of something else.
Okay, so I have a couple of things real quick. I know that it doesn't benefit Spot in any way, but we hear you. I mean, obviously, you're doing things during the show, and it's Covino and Rich.
Yeah.
So I know when I first started listening to you guys, there was an hour before Covino and Rich called Spot Center.
Hated it.
Hated it. Why?
I hate the responsibility, and maybe it was it was a different time, but it's very difficult to be a host, and like I don't know how that ever happened. And I know the whole reason for Spot Center was, hey, come on for a couple minutes, talk to yourself, introduce Covino and Rich clips before the show, and then the show will start. And it's very difficult. I think it's a very difficult thing to be a host by yourself.
Was it live?
It was live.
I can't imagine that.
It's difficult, and like I didn't mind it, and I had fun with it. But where I really thrive is bouncing off of someone. So like the days that Covino would hop on it, like when he was remote, and he would hop on a little bit earlier, and we'd make fun of Rich. Great, but then a lot of times it became like, oh, we're keeping topics to Spot Center and not doing them on the show. But like I like this interaction right now. Like I love talking to people. You ask me questions, I'll talk. But I can't just sit and be like, what am I going to talk about today? What am I going to talk about? Like I can't talk to myself. I can't do that.
So there's no chance of Spot Center 2.0?
No, I mean, the only way a Spot Center 2.0 would exist is if I like was doing it with someone.
Okay.
It would have to be with someone. I can't talk to myself. I mean, I can and I do, but I feel like it wouldn't be entertaining. Like I enjoy, if you give me something to talk about, or if you ask me a question, I could go on forever. This case in point. But if you just sat me here and was like, all right, talk, I'd be like, I'd freeze.
Yeah.
So.
But and I think you're selling yourself short, because I think if it was, let's do Spot Center 2.0, you would come with topics, you would have, and I think as soon as you start, you're glancing over at your notes, you have your bullet points where you're like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this and this, things that you feel, strongly about. I think people would like to hear Spot's opinion. So just throwing it out there for what it's worth. We would love Spot 2.0, Spot Center. So if you ever get a wild hair up your ass and do one episode, I'm sure we'd love to hear
Well,
it.
now we do Behind the Velvet Rope. So like, if you want to hear what I'm thinking about, that's good.
So,
I need to do
are
more. I
you
need to do
guys?
more of those.
Well, I was gonna ask, when was the last time you guys did a?
I did this one last
Poly Talk?
week.
Poly Talk?
Oh, Poly Talk. It's been a minute.
Okay, so is that done, or are we
No,
just
it's
kind of
not
whenever you
done.
have stories?
So the difficult thing about Poly Talk, and if anything, not that I want to launch as its own thing, but I would like to launch it as its own thing. Not to pay, just like out there in the free space, but and maybe like first release it here and then like release it out in the wild. But it has to, when there's no updates, it's like life's pretty static. Things kind of coast along for a while. So we get in these they're not ruts. It's just like we're in routines again. So like crazy things will happen. We'll kind of break it down. That's a Poly Talk. And then like it'll be routine for a while. So like nothing crazy, but I think what we would need to do to make Poly Talk a more sustainable thing is make it like, all right, here's what we're going to discuss about like relationships or poly relationships or interactions. That's the focus of the episode. It can't be about like, oh, here's what we did the last 2 weeks.
And you know what the thing is, if Kristen was okay with it, with you guys, doing that, I think Poly Talk could be the backbone of the show. But look at Have Kids, they said. Right?
What about
do they talk about kids?
Oh no, not at all.
That's
the
background. That's the backbone of the show.
Yes.
That's their starting point.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you guys did Poly Talk, hey, I'm Spot, this is Kristen, whatever, this is our lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. And just even, babe, what happened this weekend or whatever.
Right.
Not poly related. Did you watch the new Gladiator movie or whatever? Right.
Yeah, I still though think it is a good, because there isn't a lot out there for people who do what we do. So I think addressing issues, and this is where me as a entertainer and Kristen as a therapist, I think we could bring really good insight to people that need it, because I feel like a lot of people in this world are a little bit lost or not sure or need help or need those kinds of things. So I think I would want to kind of keep it niche to that. I don't want to get distracted by like, oh, tell me about, what you did this past weekend.
I think having it niche is probably the best way to do it if you want it to grow and be successful, right?
Right.
You want it to be niche. And my next question is I guess kind of off of Poly Talk, what has been your most surprising, I don't want to say observation or just feedback or something about your poly lifestyle? Are you, I know you have mentioned there are way more Carls that are reaching out to you and saying, hey, we live this or we do that. Yeah. What has been the most surprising thing from day one where you said, hey, I'm Spot, this is now me?
From, what was it, October 12th, 2022? Was it 2022? No.
It was.
It was.
It was.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, it was, because we're approaching our 3 years. The surprising positive thing or the surprising negative thing?
Just anything in general. Just the most. I mean, if you want one and one, how about that? I asked my daughter, what are 3 good things that happened at school today and 3 bad things that happened?
I think the most surprising thing is realizing that there's a lot going on in plain sight that we don't realize. So like I said, it happened more at the beginning, less so now, even though I still touch base with a few people, but it was more like, oh, I'm doing this, or I've tried this, or I'm experimenting with this. Cool. So I think there are a lot more people do it than we realize, and it's a lot more, I don't want to say normalized, because I don't think it is normalized quite yet, but I think more people are doing it than we realize. Just less people talk about it, which is why I'm happy to talk about it and take one for the team. Where it sucks is the negative reactions that come off of it, and it depends on my mood, much like with anything negative on the internet. So if I'm having a bad day or something's going on and people are saying, like, making gay jokes or all that kind of stuff, it can weigh on me a little bit more. I am a person, and it might come out in a certain way, and I'll deal with it. But that's just me. I think there are situations. I don't know. I feel like I'm happy to be open about it. And I think overall it's been pretty well received. I do think there are a few people that are a little bit small-minded, even though they don't realize it. I think there have been people that have, when people leave Patreon, sometimes they leave comments, and some of those comments have been specifically about me, and they've been specifically about Kavita and Rich as well. But
That's crazy.
the reason, if that's the reason, it's like, come on,
That's crazy. That's crazy to me that somebody
yeah.
would be so passionate that they would cancel their subscription and let you know. Does it matter about?
Right.
I don't know, but whatever. I mean,
But I don't know. I realize it's not for everybody. I don't expect it to be for everybody. And I still do stand by my statement that I've made on the show that, like, I do regret a little bit revealing the sexual experimentation side of things. Maybe I should have kept that a little bit closer for a little bit longer, but I'm happy to be able to talk about, because maybe it does, if it helps. Like I always say, if I tell a joke and one person laughs, I've done my job. Even if you don't just think it's the worst joke ever, if someone like chuckles or someone sends a text and like, that was hilarious, I'm happy. So
okay, there's plenty of those.
What?
There's plenty of those. So I'll be sure to either put it in the chat or just let you know, because there's times where even if you're on the phone and they're saying something and you kind of just mumble something,
I'm always paying attention.
half of those are killers, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, yeah, in Rich's butt or whatever, and I'm like, and either they choose to ignore it or they're in their own mode where they're not listening. But that kind of usually cracks me up, and so I'll be sure to let you know, because I laugh in silence. I'm like, oh, that was funny.
I don't need it. I don't need to hear it, but like, as long as I know someone out there laughs, I'm happy.
Right.
But yeah, as long as I think someone out there appreciates it. I not that, like I said, not that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in my life these days, but I do hope that, I had hoped that it would be a little bit more of a vehicle for conversation, and it just didn't. Like, it's dead in the water. So now I'm like, okay, why did I do that?
Well, I think
like, why did I do that? I thought it was going to be much more better. I thought it was going to be much better for the show. Why did I do that?
it happens. I mean, it happens. I mean, right? There's going to be so many things that if you just only say what you think is going to strike gold, or then it's basically your brainstorming, right? And one or two of those are going to hit, and I mean, whatever, you have to throw a couple of wild pitches to get a home run, right? Or I don't know, that's not an analogy, but whatever. Okay, one question as far as before we move on from that, I would love you to explore more of this poly talk. So if it has been in the back of your mind, I think that would be awesome. And if you ever need any help with anything, just let me know. And you know me, I'm always willing to help the show.
Another thing too, I don't want it to distract from the main product. Not that I'm saying it'll do better. I mean, I don't want it to take away my energy, because it's like my plate is already full and I even still feel like I'm struggling to keep up with it. So adding something else, if like I put it, I just know it's bad optics.
I understand.
If you put attention into something and not
saying no to something else,
it's always gonna, which is, so I'd rather just focus my attention on where it counts.
But sometimes you have to do something for a spot as well, so keep that in mind.
Does anything for spot.
Before we go, because I know we're gonna wrap it up. What has been? I asked you your most surprising thing about this poly lifestyle and all that, but as far as we all know, you didn't grow up. I mean, besides soccer, playing sports, what has been the most surprising thing about Fox that you enjoy, that you maybe didn't know you enjoyed?
Don't forget basketball. I think that.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a really great team there. I really enjoy the people there. I know they pretend like I don't interact with anybody, but I love everyone there. At first I really was like struggling to adjust to the new environment. Like, they didn't understand. They show up, they talk, they leave. Me, it was like learning a whole new process on top of the daily show that we've been doing with Patreon. It was like, I come home, I edit, so it's like, it's an endless job, like making sure cameras are all about that. So at first it was a little bit of a struggle, like adapting, but now it's like, there's a great team in place there. I really like everyone that works there. I've absorbed way more than I thought I ever would. I'm still not the biggest of sports fans. I still think there's just so much content, so much sports out there.
There is.
And like, I don't want to waste my Sunday sitting on a couch watching, especially here out in LA. That time of year is beautiful. That's when that's when I go out and I do my walks and I go for hikes and I go to the beach. I'm going to the beach in October. Like, I don't want to on a Sunday, which is the only day my wife has off that we have off together. I don't want to be sitting on the couch and be like, "Oh, sorry, honey, I got to watch all these games for work tomorrow. I'll check the highlights."
Right.
But it's not my job to talk about them, so it's technically not my responsibility. But I am aware and I absorb everything. I know what's going on. They don't think I do, but I do.
No, I've heard your commentary on, because I listen to Fox Sports, obviously, and I've heard your commentary where I'm like, oh, you know what? I know that you're absorbing it, and I know you're, and it's funny to me that the guys will call you out on, oh, you've been working out for 5 years, so you're the Klug. Oh, you have been watching sports, for a few years, so now you know everything. But you do know a ton more than they give you credit for.
Yes.
Because there's times where Rich will try to call you out on name every quarterback.
Name the Eagles secondary. Right? I love that comment.
And it's funny because you will more times than not.
Right.
And he still doesn't give you credit for it, which makes me laugh because I'm like, just because he proved you wrong doesn't mean that you shouldn't be like, well, all right, well, good.
Like I fully acknowledge that I know a fraction of what they know. I haven't lived this as my life. I don't know a lot of people's stats. I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot of players on all the teams, especially now. Everything's changed. Now I have to relearn it, which is a pain in the ass. I think, and not that they're not obsessive, but sports people are a little obsessive. They're very one-dimensional, and they're very obsessive. And that's not me. I like knowing a little bit about everything. So I know enough to hold a conversation. Don't get me, if I have to talk to a hardcore sports person, I'm out. I'm like, oh yeah, great. I'll throw enough like breadcrumbs where it's like, it seems like I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes that happens at Fox. I'm just like, I don't really care.
Well, my buddy told me one time, my buddy Nico, he was like, I want to learn the piano. And I was like, you do? He goes, but I want to learn enough to play a couple of chords and then say, I'm just never mind. I'm not going to finish that.
It's easy. You can. Right? It's easy.
You can do that with Fox Sports, right?
I do that with Fox Sports, yeah. But like, I appreciate it and I understand it, and like, I'll acknowledge that people love it. I know enough, but like, yeah, I know I like knowing a little bit about everything and certain things and picking up on certain things and like enough to have a conversation. And a lot of times when I chime in on the Fox show, it's more common sense than anything. Like, I don't need to know the history of the 49ers to make a commentary on a current story that's going on. I will always work out things in my mind before opening my mouth because I know if I say something, Rich or Cavito are going to jump down my throat because that's not how it is. Actually, Rich is. Cavito won't care.
Yeah.
Rich is going to be, that's not it at all.
Rich is such a, I know you said like, the experts, but Rich is such a sports dork. That
I always say, like, it's like, we are Fox Sports. I'm like, we are Fox Dorks. I always say it to them, like, you're Fox Dorks.
Whenever my daughter hears that in the car, because there's times where you will say it, and I'm picking her up from school or something, she'll be like, Fox Dorks. Like, Fox she thinks it's hilarious.
It's true. But like, as long as you have enough pieces to formulate a thought that makes sense, you can have a conversation. And I do that a lot. And a lot of times they think they know more than me. And they do, but that doesn't negate my point.
Correct.
You can still make a valid point with enough facts, not all of the facts. And it's just a different perspective. Same with working out. It's a different perspective. You can have knowledge. I can have knowledge. My knowledge is just different.
This is what I'll say about your working out.
Yeah.
So there was a time in my life where I laid tile with a friend of mine, and he had been, he was really
I
good at
heard
it.
I heard you were more into laying pipe.
No, actually, one of my best friends, he's the head of the piping department at his job. So
Sure, he loves
he does that.
he lays pipe.
Well,
Yeah.
I was never the big pipe layer. Come on, let's be honest. But my buddy's grandfather had been doing tile for like 30 some odd years, right? And just because he had been doing it 30 some odd years, he thought my buddy didn't know as much. But since my buddy had been doing it for, I don't know, 10 years or so, he had newer techniques. He had knowledge that was more today and current. So just because if somebody's been working out for 40 years, they're probably doing the same preacher curls, and you're over here going, you know what? I can get a full body workout if I have a kettlebell and or whatever the case, right? So just because they've been doing it longer doesn't necessarily mean they have more knowledge or they're better.
Right. And it's more fresh. I apply myself very hard. I work very hard to do this. I work with a very knowledgeable person who's constantly researching things and staying up
Yes.
on things and is a huge nerd. So it's like, I feel like what I've accomplished, like if the two of them, and that's why I wanted to, I don't know if you heard me mention recently, I want to get them in for like 2 sessions with the Rooster.
Mhm.
If the two of them did what I do for like, let's say 3 months, let's pick a 3-month window. If they were 3 days a week for 3 months, they would be jacked or like cut or whatever. And I know they don't want to push themselves and they don't want to get injuries and they're old and whatever. And they think that because I'm susceptible to shoulder injuries that they will be, but it's like proper form and pushing yourself. And like, you can accomplish so much. Diet, which is a huge part of it. I don't think they've ever tracked a macro in their life.
Yeah.
It's worked for me, but it works for me, doesn't work for them. I'm not saying I know everything, but I'm just saying it's a little bit fresher in my mind. That's it.
Yeah. And one last thing on that is I know you can't ever say anything because Rich will jump in with let's have a jump rope contest, right? He wants to, and you're like, let's do it. And he'll be like, it's so, as a listener, just know that a lot of the times we're screaming at our radio or screen or whatever it is, because it's like, you're like, okay, let's do it. You're like, well, I got to take Emmy to baseball practice. You're like, then shut up, right?
The two of them are very strong. I've worked out with Rich. I've seen Cavino work out, but I know they're very strong. But like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the form is good. They could probably push and pull more weight than I can, but I will do it with control and we'll get 8 to 10 valid reps. So, but it works let's be honest, riding on genetics, I know what it's like to have been dealt the genetic hand. And how hard it is to push past it.
Yeah.
And fight it every day.
Yeah.
So
it's such a struggle, and it's
a struggle
for those people that were born with Greg's genetics.
I hate it.
Swear swear that he eats clean, but I'm like, dog, it's your genetics. You're not eating Taco Bell 13 times a week and looking like Rich if genetics don't have something to do with it.
Yeah. Plus,
but anyway,
he does the sports.
Yeah.
He does the softball, so he's moving. It's a different type of activity though.
Yeah, 100%. But Spot, I really enjoyed your time here, and I don't know how much of this will try to keep most of it in.
Not at all.
Try to keep most of it in. Well, we'll have a 15-minute episode, but it'll be good.
Yeah.
Right.
Cut it down.
But I definitely listen. I appreciate your time, and just know that the invitation. I know you said episode 287. The invitation is always there.
Yeah, I'm always willing to shoot this if I have the time.
So if you
It's
ever,
a rarity.
if it's ever a time I know we went long today, but if you ever just say, hey, you know what, let's jump on for 30 minutes. I'm always game. So just let me know, and you're always welcome on the after show, but later. So episode number 280 something. I don't know where we're at, but we're up there, and we will continue to go strong. The after show, but later. It's your boy D. It's Spotty. Thank you so much for your time, Spot. Baseline Trey, take us out of here as you always do.
Now buckle up your seats and prepare for for the journey. Let the music ease your soul, grab a spliff and start burning. Relax with us and take a trip to the heavens and come and spend a day in the 757.